My father hates you. He'll marry me to Rogan right after he runs you through with what's left of his sword.
The pigs would miss me.
Oh, damn the pigs, Will!
You fool!
We must all get ready now.
Hello, it's me, the cat, and this is Dawn of the Dragon Slayer, a film produced by Aerostorm Entertainment. I briefly talked about Aerostorm Entertainment before, and now, at long last, I'm finally reviewing one of their movies. And what a movie this is. I have a long history with this studio. In fact, the Mythica series of films they produced are the very thing that inspired me to make this channel to begin with. And as you can clearly tell by my high energy tone, I'm simply bursting from the seams with joy to be finally reviewing one of their films. Aerostorm specializes in making fantasy and sci-fi films of questionable quality. What am I saying? Look at these amazing classics like Survivor, with green screen so good it puts all of Hollywood to shame. Or who could forget the absolute banger that was so beloved they had to disable the likes for the trailer. I'm of course talking about the fun for all ages classic, Oh Zombie.
Bin Laden is back.
We and a few others are the only thing standing between the people of Afghanistan and a zombie apocalypse.
If you can believe it, this film is the studio's first project, so you'd think that they'd want to try and make a good first impression on the audience. Well, yeah, I really wish that were the case.
Oh my God!
This bright and sunny schlock is directed by Anne Black. Yep, it's her again. I can never escape. No matter where I go, I can never escape her.
Me. It was all me, James. It's always been me, the author of all your pain.
Anne's had her hands in many of the films I've seen thus far, and not a single film she's been a part of has been good. So you know we're in for a swell time here with her in the director's chair. Now, one thing I like about physical media is all the interesting bonus content you can get with it. A lot of juicy stuff is stored in the bonus content, and I feel it adds a lot of value to a DVD. And as for this DVD, it has nothing. Seriously, it has nothing. There's a scene selection menu, the movie, and the trailer, and that's it. Are you kidding me? Really? As someone who's made DVDs before, it wouldn't have been hard for Anne to sit down one morning and make a director's commentary or something. Simon Wells, the director of Dragon Kingdom, managed to do that, so why couldn't she? The lack of any bonus material really cuts the value of this DVD for sure. So if you plan on procuring this here film, don't plan on getting anything special with it. But what about the cover? Well, at least it's got the main character from the movie on it, and the dragon that's actually in the movie. So far, so good. However, I'm not really a fan of the layout here. The title is just smack dab right here in the middle, and it covers up a lot of the main character. We really should see him in some exciting pose, getting ready to face the dragon or something. You know, have that be at the bottom there, and then put the title up here, and there you go. That Slayer is done and for sure now. But while the front may have earned some points, it sure loses them quickly on the back. Like, look at this. That's just the same dragon image they moved around. And who's this dingus? Arthur from Merlin? Sure ain't our main character, that's for sure. Overall, the cover's not bad, but it's not the greatest either. As one of Aerostorm Entertainment's first forays into film, Dawn of the Dragon Slayer is full of generic fantasy tropes, has a lackluster revenge story, and one of the most dumb main characters I've seen in a while, as you're about to see for yourself. It's about time I shine some light on this disaster. This is Dawn of the Dragon Slayer. Before we begin, I want to talk about the two opening scenes in this movie, because they're just really unnecessary. The first is with this shepherd dude playing his flute during an obvious day for night shot, and right after he sits down on a rock to play a little ditty on his wee piccolo here, the scene ends when a dragon shows up, and he's consumed by a very poor overlay of fire. I think they're trying to set up the dragon, but this scene just ends up being goofy, and we don't really learn anything about the dragon, like how it hunts, or specific things it targets, and so on. So it's not even really good as a setup. The next scene is with this shirtless dude named Crow, who's mumbling some stuff to a fire with some pretty shoddy ADR work that doesn't match his mouth movements at all.
Hamburger, cheeseburger, Big Mac, Whopper. Hamburger, cheeseburger, Big Mac, Whopper.
After he's done wrapping the old tongue to his fire, a huge dragon pops out and spooks him. And that is the scene. You know, the writers and director could have spent this time giving us some backstory on the world and laying the seeds of some major plot elements that'll be important to the characters later on. But you see, watching this dude here on this rock is far more important. However, after those two scenes, we open to the actual meat of the story. The film follows the story of Will, played by Richard McWilliams, an average sheep herder who lives with his father Tom, played by Anthony Murphy. Will and his father spend their time tending to their flock of sheep and training in the field with swords during their off time. Later, Will and his father head home where they meet Crow, the shirtless dude from before. Crow is a shaman, I guess, who is a friend of their family or something. And while the three of them enjoy each other's company, Will tells his father several sheep in their herd have been killed, which seems to pique Tom's interest. And with this news in mind, Tom stands and gives Will a mysterious slip of sealed paper.
There's nothing for you up here. You've a gift, and one that'll be wasted as a farmer. There's a great man that goes by the name of Sterling. Take this to him. Take him that, and he'll take you on as a bondsman.
He's a clever man, and he'll win favor with the new king. He'll raise you up with him. It's a future, Will, if you're smart enough to see it.
After Tom tells Will he needs to go work for the Baron Sterling as a bondsman, Will is like, "But Dad, I like it here." And Tom is like, "I'm your daddy, and you'll listen to your daddy," before he storms off. I think it's a bit interesting they had the main character actually want to remain where he is. I wonder if they'll use this as a part of Will's motivation later on in the story. Much later, Will and his father's sheep keep getting killed, and one day Will and Tom find a massive, disgusting pellet in the field. Tom determines that only one creature could make a pellet like this, and of course, that creature is a dragon. Because that's something dragons do, I guess? Will proposes to Tom that if there's a dragon, there should be a nest. And where there's a nest, there's eggs. And we're told that each egg, if sold to the right person, is worth at least 1,000 gold pieces. I'm not sure how a rural farm boy away from civilization and living in a world where dragons haven't been in these parts for 30 years knows this much about dragons, but whatever. Tom is rightfully reluctant to rob a dragon, but Will eventually convinces him to track the dragon down and get its eggs. So, not long after, they travel together to steal the dragon's eggs. And unlike some other movies I know, they make the sensible decision to use spears instead of tiny arming swords and kite shields. Nice work, movie. For doing something sensible, here's a bar of chocolate I found between my couch cushions. Much later, they come to some cliffs where they think the dragon is nesting. Tom takes a single glance at the cliffside and says, "Nah, I ain't doing next time." While Will, on the other hand, has the will to continue.
I'm funny.
Though I think Tom has a point in not wanting to climb the rocks right now. I mean, those rocks are probably slick what with the falling rain and... Oh, wait, never mind. Guess it's not raining anymore. But as Will ascends the rocks, Tom senses something lurking in the clouds above. Oh no! Oh Jesus! I, and of course anyone who read the DVD's back, could never have seen that coming. Despite being a tad predictable, I actually don't mind this death scene all that much, because now I finally see what this film is trying to do. You see Will, motivated by keeping his idyllic life on the farm, convinced his father to embark on a dangerous journey. And after his choice of seeking out the dragon got his father killed, we fade to black and open to a grieving Will, who, filled with rage, goes to the dragon's nest, where he faces the dragon to get revenge for his father. However, he's not experienced enough and is narrowly saved by Crow before the dragon can kill him. Then, after the battle, Will realizes it's not only the dragon that killed his father, but that he too has blood on his hands for convincing his father to go out and search for the dragon. A choice made to keep the life he had with his father, a life he could never have again. Wow, what a great setup for both a revenge and redemption story. Truly, I am shocked. Like I said, we open to Will grieving at the base of the cliffs. And wait, what? We're not at the cliffs where the dragon is? Where are we? What? Why is Will at the ocean? Is none of what I said going to happen? Ah, damn. Yeah, basically none of what I said is going to happen. In fact, after they're done mourning Tom, Kelly family style, Will tells Crow he's going to go back to fight the dragon, but he's immediately shot down by Crow, who tells him he needs to honor his father's wishes to become a bondsman for Sterling. Rather than fight Crow on this, Will just takes his advice and leaves. But right before Will is about to set off on his journey to become a bondsman, Crow leaves him with a gift.
A warrior garment. Passed down through my order. I am the last now, and I have no need of battle. Infused by prayers to 1,000 gods. If a man wears it in faith, he will find protection in it.
Wait, you could have given him that shirt before they went off to face the dragon? What else do you have that could have helped them? Some friend you are. After a 1 minute and 30-second travel montage, Will comes across a woman who's trying to build a stone wall. And because he's a rugged farm boy and knows how to get his hands dirty, he shows her how to properly build a wall. After flirtatiously showing her up, Will arrives at the Baron's manor. Here, Will discovers the girl from the wall was not just some poor farmhand, but Sterling's daughter, Kate, played by Nicola Posner. And as the Baron, played by Ian Cullen, reprimands her for doing manual labor, because she's a noble and stuff. We also learn the Baron has fallen onto hard times, as the dilapidated state of his home would indicate. I actually think this is a clever way to have an in-universe reason to explain why the ruin they decided to film in is, well, a ruin. What? I gotta give them props where it counts. Anyway, Sterling, still upset, dismisses Kate before speaking to Will about his letter. Upon receiving the letter, the Baron's mood seems to shift, and he allows Will to work for him, but more as a servant than a bondsman. There will come a time when the contents of that paper are revealed, but we'll get there soon enough. The Baron makes Will stay in the stable with these 3 other guys. Now, there's a lot of bad stuff in this movie, whether it's the boring story, bad effects, lackluster characters, you name it. However, one of the worst things in this movie are these 3 stooges, because they are terrible.
Somebody here, Jack. Did your sheep run off?
They was getting overworked.
Go on. Dig that dirt, boy.
Well, there's nothing I like more than getting my hands wet, doing a nice bit of that sweaty laundry.
In a lot of media, there are characters you're meant to hate. Characters that are mean, awful, and just downright cruel to a character. And these guys are exactly that. This trope is so common across media that they have a term for it. Now, I may get some flack for using the TV tropes definition, but I think it best describes this trope. Basically, these characters are hate sinks. The purpose of a hate sink character is to be, well, hated. No duh. That way the audience can find another character, usually the main character, who is better by comparison. And that's exactly why they're using this trope in the movie. They're hoping that you see these horrible and god-awful people and like and feel sympathy for Will, who is better by comparison. The reason I dislike this trope is because it's a cheap and lazy way to get the audience to like a character. Because rather than have the main character work for the audience's approval, just slap in a walking, talking piece of human refuse into the story and instantly the main character is already leaps and bounds better, simply because they're not them. So instead of feeling sympathy for Will or liking him as a character, I just end up feeling frustrated, because the hatred these 3 goblins feel towards Will feels forced and unearned. It'd be one thing if they were jealous of Will for winning the Baron's favor despite being new or something, and then maybe the torment toward Will wouldn't seem as forced. But them being a trope is indicative of one of the greater problems with this movie. Rather than rely on engaging storytelling to get you invested into the characters and narrative, the creators would rather use quick and easy tropes to do the job. And that's a lazy way to go about writing your characters and story. Apparently, the reason they're so mean to him is because he's a
Jack,
which is a peasant, I think. I tried to look into the word, but I couldn't find anything on it, so let me know in the comments if you know what that is. Either way, outside of giving these guys a quick way to hate Will, none of their hatred towards him feels natural, and it leaves me in grievous amounts of pain that not even 3 buckets of Motrin could dull. Also, this guy is back. He's the same actor who played that guy who bullied Oleg in Dragon Hunter, and here he is once again playing the bully. Even in another life, you're still terrible. I will never forgive you for what you've done. What has been done cannot be undone. The next day, Will is tormented by these 3 gremlins, and later he stumbles upon Kate bathing in a freezing pool of Irish water. And like the virtuous hero he is, Will watches her as he hides behind a tree with the same skill and grace of a porno actor. Kate is reasonably surprised by his peeping, but then as the conversation goes on, she just casually shrugs it off like it was nothing. The moment switches tones and topics so fast, it really does feel like I'm watching The Room again.
Ah! What are you doing here? I'm laundry! Bring me that! me. Look over there.
Well, don't just stand there. I thought you were here to be a bondsman to my father.
How was work today?
Oh, pretty good. We got a new client at the bank. We'll make a lot of money.
What client?
I cannot tell you. It's confidential.
Oh, come on. Why not?
No, I can't. Anyway, how is your sex life?
Kate asks Will how his people died, to which he plainly replies,
Dragon.
I mean, this would be a great moment to reflect on who convinced his father to go fight the dragon in the first place, and flesh out his guilt as an internal conflict in the film. Oh, well. Later, I'm not sure how much later, just later, Will is tending the Baron's cabbage patch when a noble guest by the name of Rogan, who is played by Philip Brody, comes to visit the Baron's manor. One of my favorite moments from this scene is when Kate comes out all dressed up, and the camera cuts to Will's face as he gazes at her with awe. Only rather than looking like he's in awe, it looks like his brain has stopped working or something. I suppose this is as good a time as any to talk about Richard's acting, because let me tell you, the character Plink from Ed, Edd and Eddy displays a wider range of emotions compared to Richard here. Through pretty much most of the movie, he has the same blank, pensive, if not slightly constipated look on his face. In moments where he should be frustrated, in awe, shocked, or feeling, human emotions, he just stares with absolute obliviousness, completely free of emotion. Obviously, there's moments where he smirks, or times where he has an outburst of anger, but by and large, this expression here, that's what's there. Anyway, moving on. Inside the manor, we see Rogan, Kate, and the Baron eating a meal together, with the Baron talking about how he'll go to the King's Court with Rogan soon. Oh, and I forgot to mention the Baron's cousin is visiting too. And at the dinner table, they talk about some of the most riveting topics, like politics we're never going to see, and won't have any sort of significant impact on the plot or characters. Oh boy, my favorite.
This place is in ruins.
We're managing. Now that King Owen occupies the throne, will soon be restored into the grace of the crown.
I wish for you to join me at the Council of Knights. A croft in the High Country was found burned, the family left strewn for a league or more. It seems we have a dragon hunting in our lands.
You're back, sir.
Indeed. Wasted time, nothing but politics, boy. All talk and posturing with no purpose.
Why would you do this to me? However, as the conversation shifts to what the most popular game in court is at the moment, a game simply called The Game, Lady Spriggs, yeah, that's her name, offers up Will as an opponent to challenge Rogan. Because he said he's going to slay the dragon, and I guess that upset Rogan, and she just wants to see them go at it, I guess? I mean, this is the first scene she's been in, and she's never even seen him fight, or even seen him at all up until this point. And for all she knows, he's terrible at fighting. Lady, just because he's got the chutzpah doesn't mean he's got the skill. So I don't really see why offering him up as a challenger to Rogan is a good idea. Unless, of course, it wasn't her but the plot that was speaking, because it's the 30-minute mark and nothing exciting has happened, and because it's a bad movie, there needs to be an action scene, and that action scene needs a main character in it. Nah, I don't think that's it. Rogan, being the cheeky noble he is, agrees, and the two of them go out into the courtyard to participate in the game. The game, by the way, is just a normal duel with the only unique thing about it being that both contestants are joined together by a rope. And this fight is not only ridiculous, it's also boring. Nothing is at stake, and it doesn't play into Will's character or his internal conflict. This could be a good moment to show how Will's anger and stubbornness prevent him from succeeding, but instead it's just a boring duel with ridiculous choreography. Like they try to make Rogan look like he's good at sword fighting by having him approach Will while doing this hilariously impractical spin that leaves him wide open to attack. But as you can see, it just ends up looking absolutely silly.
I'll try spinning, that's a good trick.
And of course, since Rogan is more experienced, he wins the first round. But during the second round, Will gets a slight upper hand, and this pisses off Rogan, who punches Will in the face and wins because of his dirty fighting. Outside of learning that Rogan likes to win, there's really nothing else developed or learned from this fight. It would have been more interesting if Rogan had insulted Will about something, and out of anger, Will decided to challenge Rogan to the game, with Rogan offering to knight Will if he succeeds in beating him, or something like that. And it doesn't matter that Will's a servant or something, since Rogan is cocky and experienced, so it would be well within his character to accept a challenge like that. Doing something like this would give the fight some kind of stakes, since Will could use the status of a knight to get the resources he needs to slay the dragon. Literally having them fight over, well, anything else would have made this fight better, but like a lot of bad movies, this just ends up being action for the sake of having action to try and wake up those of us the movie put to sleep. Later, the Baron plans on leaving to court with Rogan, and as night approaches, Will copes and seethes at his defeat earlier that day. Later, Kate arrives to cheer him up and gives him a tabard with her father's colors since he's going to court with them. But right after Kate leaves, Will goes into the living quarters where those 3 stupid dudes are, and where Curly is waiting for him. I think his name is like Sam or something, but I'm going to call him Curly because I don't like him, and the name seems more fitting, what with him being part of this trio of stooges and everything. Curly tells Will the Baron is keeping him at the manor while they go off with the Baron to court. I'm not sure why the Baron is taking these guys of all people, that makes no sense. However, after the conversation, Will goes to check his things where he discovers his father's knife is gone. We were never shown that his father's knife was important, but whatever. Will, reasonably enough, suspects Curly took it, because, like, who else would? And they get into a big fight because of it.
It's about time we taught this child a lesson. Come here. Oh, come on. Get him. Come on. Come on, you jack. Come on.
Despite getting dragged around by the neck and being beaten senselessly like a bubble-blowing baby in the Thug Tug, we open to the next day where we see Will sitting on some grass with a bruise. Yeah, that's all the damage they did to him. That's it. This dude is very durable. Oh, and before I forget, the Baron doesn't reprimand his men for potentially stealing from Will, you know, his future bondsman, and wailing on him throughout the night. That would be cause and effect, and we can't be having none of that now. As Kate comes to talk to Will, it turns out that the only thing the Stooges managed to actually break was Will's spirit, as the fight in the stable was the last straw for him. Kate, trying her best to comfort him, decides there's something she wants to show him. And what she wants to show him confuses me. You see, Kate takes Will up to the manor's armory, shows him a chest containing a 400-year-old sword, which is a Sterling family heirloom. And what does he do after being told it's a 400-year-old family heirloom? Why, he just grabs it out of her hands and starts flourishing it, of course.
Why, Huey? Why, Huey? Why?
Our hero? Everyone? But it's not just the sword she wanted to show him. It's also this dusty book about paladins, who, I guess, slay dragons and stuff. And this book here has got, like, a lot of information about them and stuff. And promising to train Will while the Baron is away, using the book as a guide, Kate and Will engage in a training montage! Yes, yes, yes! Ride that horse, swing that hammer, use that spear, read that book! Will any of this training be used to fight the dragon? Does the suffering never cease? Later they meet in a clearing and talk some more about paladin stuff. This scene is supposed to expand on what a paladin is, but outside of learning where the dragon's weak spot is, and some information on how magic works in this world, which, spoiler alert, is only relevant like 2 times in the movie, which means most of this information in this scene doesn't matter in the long run. And that's pretty much it for that scene. Yep. Okay, so the movie so far hasn't been, well, good. And we've had some notable highlights of schlockiness thus far, but only one scene takes the cake for the most bonkers nonsense in the entire movie. And I think this one scene truly solidifies Will as one of the dumbest main characters I've seen in a long time. And that scene is when Will re-encounters the dragon. Sometime later, after Kate and Will have finished discussing paladin stuff, we open with Will, who is thumbing at the shirt Crow gave him. At one point, he hears a familiar roar and goes out of the stable to see if it truly is what he thinks it is. And oh boy, it is what it is, and it is the dragon. And what does this man do? Well, he does what any sane person might do. He bolts it to the manor, rushes past Lady Spriggs and Kate, bursts into the armory, completely ignores the spears, bows, and other weapons he actually trained with in the montage, grabs the 400-year-old family heirloom sword, runs out of the castle into the open, runs up onto the wall, and what happens next is just absolutely insane. And it truly is something you need to see for yourself. What did I say? Absolutely wacky. I have no further comment on this scene. Do I even need to say anything else? Unfortunately, Will survived his encounter with the dragon and awakes in the manor with Kate at his side. Turns out since she's a conjurer or something, she came out at the last minute and cast shield at the 9th level or something on him, which prevented him from being barbecued alive by the dragon. Kate is upset at Will for just rushing at the dragon head on, so she leaves the room after telling him off. Spriggs then comes in and tells Will what happened in greater detail. She even says that Kate got burned by the dragon while trying to save him. Curious, I'm not really sure where, but I guess we'll have to take her word for it. When the Baron returns having gained absolutely nothing from his trip outside of a horse he won at court, he sends Will off to go get it while he goes to the manor. In the manor, the Baron finds his 400-year-old family heirloom is broken, and he nearly kills Kate for showing it to Will. But he doesn't end up going through with it, and instead he ends up smacking her instead. Whoa, that's a bit intense. Furious with her father, Kate runs into the misty Irish countryside to where, I don't know. And later we see her alone, cold, and stuck in the misty Irish wilderness. Truly, it is a terrible fate. As Will is on the road with the horse, Crow awakes him suddenly, and he tells him he's had a vision of Kate alone in the wilderness, and so he heads off to find her in the incredibly misty hills of Ireland. And I mean, like, seriously, did the Selkies and fairies have a big rave and leave the fog machine on or something? Like, geez, they chose the mistiest days to film this movie. Though eventually Dearest William does find Kate, and they sit down and catch up with each other. Will wants to take her back to the Baron, but Kate tells him it'll be dangerous to face him as things currently are. But despite everything, Will does convince Kate to leave with him, and they even have a big passionate smooch? You can never really tell with Will. As Will and Kate travel back to the manor, they meet Rogan, who is here now, I guess, and the others. Despite breaking the 400-year-old family sword, the Baron thanks Will for bringing Kate home, and he finally tells Will what the contents of the paper are. The Baron tells Will the paper is actually a deed of land he gave to Will's father. The Baron also tells Will he's ready to start training him as his bondsman. It's about time. Geez, it only took like 80% of the movie to get there. However, as Will decides to accept the offer, the Baron tells him about how Kate is going to be married off to Rogan. Will does not particularly like this and has a fight with the Baron about it. At one point, Lady Spriggs enters the chamber and we learn through her about the deed's true origins and the Baron's backstory. Turns out the Baron's old wife, before she kicked the bucket, was actually in love with Tom. Yes, this Tom. Then the Baron attracted her with his wealth and position, and in the end, she went with him instead of Tom. Later, the Baron's wife felt bad for marrying the rich guy, and so she ditched the Baron and went off to be with Tom. But when she found Tom, it turns out he got with some other lady, and so out of guilt, she left some land to Tom. Upon reflection, knowing what we know now, it's a bit strange to me that Tom called Sterling, the dude who stole his maiden, a great man, especially since the Baron's wife was the one who left him the land, not the Baron. Guess Tom's memory ain't so good or something. And after hearing this elaborate, wacky backstory, Will gives up his deed of land, thus getting rid of all the resources he could have used to get revenge on the dragon and secure a future for him and Kate. All to spite the Baron because of the mean things he did. You fool! After all of that, Will decides to leave the manor, and since he gave up the land, the Baron offers it to Rogan on the condition he marry Kate in exchange for an invitation to the king's court. And since they'll need to provide a gift to the king, the Baron plans on bringing him the corpse of the dragon as tribute. After that, Rogan then pays Curly to steal the Baron's prized horse and frame Will. I'm not really sure why he's doing this. This man humiliated and defeated Will in combat, is going to marry his girl, and he even took his land. So why is he framing him? Is it because Kate still loves Will? Will made it clear he didn't want anything to do with the Sterlings anymore, and having him killed wouldn't prevent her from still having feelings for him. It'd be one thing if Rogan had a vendetta against Will, where throughout the story, Will kept humiliating Rogan time after time, and kept beating him at stuff and showing him up. And then out of jealous pettiness, Rogan would have him killed for the satisfaction of getting rid of him. But this is just dumb. Well, logic excluded, Curly does just as Rogan wanted, and is killed off screen by the dragon. Oh dear. Oh my. What a tragedy. As Will is on the road, Crow meets him again because he saw him in the fire. Again. And after some discussion, Crow manages to convince Will to rescue Kate from Rogan and the Baron. Wow, that was fast. So Will returns to the Baron's manor where it turns out they've already headed off to slay the dragon. And with Kate off in the woods doing stuff, only Lady Spriggs is left at the manor. Will enters into the dining room near ye old modern handrail and talks to Lady Spriggs about the fate of the prized horse before she tells him about how the Baron went off to slay the dragon. Then she says,
I think the risk warrants the prize, don't you?
and Will gives her a look that says,
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
So Lady Spriggs takes Will into a chamber and gives him not only her grandfather's armor, but also his sword as well. The last major thing that happens in this scene is that she officially knights Will. You know, since she's like a noble and stuff, but it feels about as earned as Rey's status as a Skywalker. In the woods, Kate picks up some dirt and hears of the future, where it seems like dark times are ahead for her father, so she heads off to find him. Meanwhile, Will makes a quick pit stop at his farm to get some sheep's blood and suit up for the battle to come. Earlier in the movie, it was hinted at that the dragon really liked the taste of his family's sheep, so it's actually pretty smart to get some blood to bait out the dragon. I really do hope this streak of strategic thinking continues. Next, we cut to the Baron's hunting party, who have finally arrived at a spot they think will be best for hunting the dragon, and so they lay out a sheep as bait and prepare to do battle with it. At one point, Will shows up to speak with them, and he tells them that their spot is no good since there's no cover and they'll be roasted like pigs. However, Rogan comes out of left field with some heavy-hitting facts and just lays waste to Will.
We have visibility, there'll be no surprises. This spot is perfect.
You're making mistakes, Sterling. I faced this thing.
And how did that work out for you? Lost a sword worth twice what you are and were rescued by a woman.
If you're afraid, go back to the start.
Will just takes that absolutely devastating attack and just fucks right off to do his own thing. Rogan, man, you Sigma Chad, wow. Though before Will leaves, Lance, yeah, that's this guy's name, returns Tom's knife to Will, which he found in Curly's remains. See, he's not so bad. I mean, sure, he didn't interject when Will was getting the absolute tar beaten out of him for a whole night, and sure, he never apologized for the mean things he said, but this gesture just really redeemed him. But in my eyes, he will never be fully redeemed for the way he treated Oleg. For what has been done cannot be undone. Later, Will tracks the dragon to its nest near the sea cliffs with none of the weapons he trained with in the montage, and with the only actual weapon on his person being nothing more than a tiny arming sword. Gimme that. Then after that, we see Kate meeting up with the Baron's hunting party on her magical color-changing steed. However, the minute she shows up, the dragon arrives. The following battle is okay. A dude gets eaten, the Baron gets injured, and as the battle seems lost, Kate uses up another spell slot to cast shield again. Which I guess the dragon doesn't mess around with magic or something because it just flies off after that. But after the dragon leaves, Rogan confronts Kate about her abilities, and he tells her he's going to tame her. I'm sure there's a taming of the shrew joke in there somewhere, but whatever. But she tells him that she'll never be his, which he doesn't like. So he runs off to kill Will so he can take Kate for himself. Back at the sea cliffs, Will dumps the sheep's blood onto the wet rocks, and he sees the dragon flying in the distance. He screams, "Come on!" at the dragon, but it just ignores him, which renders this entire portion of his plan and his visit to Crow completely meaningless. I also like how he criticized the Baron and Rogan for picking an open field as their hunting space, but then he chose the flattest, most open area to face the dragon in. The lights are just not on upstairs, are they? They're just not all on, huh? As Will goes to confront the dragon, Rogan shows up to end Will once and for all. Their rivalry is so poorly developed that when Rogan shows up to kill him, Will spends a good few seconds wondering why he wants to kill him. However, as it seems Rogan has the upper hand in the fight, Will goes for his knife and sticks Rogan in the side and yeets him off into the water. But Will's battle for survival is not over, because right after Rogan's gone, the dragon shows up behind him. Basically, Will's battle for the dragon goes thusly. Will runs for the cliffs as the dragon dives for him. He hides from the dragon behind the rocks, and as it hovers its bad CG head above him, he pokes the dragon in the mouth before doing this weird little twirl to get into cover. Okay. However, as it seems like he's cornered and the dragon slowly approaches him, he takes off a glove and grips the shirt Crow gave him. And believing in the power of the shirt, he faces the dragon, who blows a cone of fire onto him. However, the magic of the shirt boosts his AC to 25, and it allows Will to get close enough to the dragon for one great blow. And as we fade to black, Will later awakes to see what happened to the dragon. After he's done inspecting the body, Will returns to the Baron's manor, where he embraces Kate and shows her he brought back a dragon's egg. So not only is he a knight, he's rich, he's got the girl, and it's a big ol' happily ever after. Yep, that's the end. Holy moly, what a film. So I guess let's talk about it. One of the main problems with this story is probably not a big shock to you. It's Will. First off, he is incredibly dumb. Why is this a problem? Well, for one, it makes it hard to connect to him as a character. I mean, when he keeps making dumb choices left and right, it makes it very hard to care about him and the story he's a part of. Ishmael from Age of the Dragons was bland, but he wasn't stupid the way Will is. Kimberly's also a stiff and terrible character, but this is special. Now, none of this would be a problem if he were making these choices because of a flaw he had. If Will, for example, had a hot temper and this led him to be irrational, and it was part of his arc to work through that problem, then it would be perfectly fine if he made some irrational decisions throughout the movie. But none of the dumb choices he makes are part of his arc. It's just him being, well, dumb. On top of being about as bright as a briquette of charcoal, Will as a character is also super bland, and that's primarily because he lacks a fleshed out internal conflict, and also any sort of quirks in personality or character in general. An internal conflict is a flaw the character has to work through, and whatever the outcome of the internal conflict is called an arc. Nobody really goes through an arc in this movie, and I feel Will especially should have gone through one to make him more interesting. The tragic thing is this movie has all the right elements to set up an internal conflict of guilt, anger, and impatience with Will, flaws which could hinder him from killing the dragon and getting revenge for his father, but they did absolutely nothing with this. Will never deals with the guilt of convincing his father to go steal from the dragon, and he never suffers any consequences for his impatience or anger. And because he doesn't have an arc, it makes a lot of moments in this movie, moments that are supposed to be big and triumphant, really dull. For example, if Will needed to come to terms with his guilt or one of his flaws in order for the warding on the shirt to work, it would make this moment where he faces the dragon much more meaningful. But as it is, moments like this where he's fighting the dragon just feel empty because he's not really overcoming a problem. There's nothing triumphant to celebrate, there's no lessons he's learning. The shirt just worked. Heck, even the external conflicts he faces throughout the movie aren't that well handled. These dudes are just cruel to make him look better by comparison. The dragon just shows up because the plot says so, and his rivalry with Rogan, if you even want to call it a rivalry, is poorly developed. What makes a rivalry work is the competition between two characters. Belloc from Indiana Jones isn't a good rival because he's got money, a sense of fashion, and is on the enemy team. He's a good rival because he's a worthy and cunning opponent to Indy as they both hunt for the Ark of the Covenant. In this movie, there's no competition between these two characters, whether that contest is for the hand of Kate, who is a better fighter, or anything really. And because their rivalry is so underdeveloped, it makes Rogan's attempt to frame Will nonsense, and their confrontation at the end seem empty. It doesn't help that every character in this movie is just some trope with a capital T. Tropes are just patterns in stories, and if they're combined with other tropes, explored or subverted, they can be effective storytelling tools. But here there's no deviation from the tropes, no exploration of them, and not a single one is subverted. And because of this, every character just feels bland and cliched. For example, Rogan is just the standard full of himself, greedy noble who's only after the Baron's land and resources. The Baron is just your everyday, rich, noble, controlling father. Tom joined the first act charred family members club, and Will is just your standard farm boy to hero who gets the girl, beats the monster, and wins the day. Need I go on? The movie has the seeds of a passable story here, and perhaps if given the proper development and care, it could have been something. Not anything amazing, mind you, but at least something passable. With what's here, they could have had a decent rivalry, romance, and revenge story, but they handled all of it with the same carefulness as that horrible machine that takes care of babies. There are a lot of issues in this movie. I could sit here for the next hour and run through each and every one of them, from the unnecessary political intrigue to the many editing mistakes they didn't catch. And that's just the tip of the iceberg if I'm being honest. I will say, despite how horrendously misty it is, I do like the locations they chose for this film. There are some genuinely pretty moments, and Anne managed to get a lot of well-framed shots that are way more impressive than some cheap fantasy movies I've seen. Also, the romance between Kate and Will is not the worst, but it's still not good. Since their romance is one of the main focuses in the movie, it feels more earned than in something like Knights of the Damned or Dragon Hunter. But like I said, it's still not very good. For example, I don't really see why Kate likes Will. For one, he has no respect for people's things. 2, he's a peeping Tom. 3, he's impulsive and brash, not to mention a huge dummy. And honestly, outside of knowing how to handle his stones, there isn't really much to be in love with here. Like I said, it's not the worst romance, but it's still not good either. Well, I guess some people really like the romance, considering there's a tribute video on YouTube about them. Dawn of the Dragon Slayer is uninteresting, riddled with generic fantasy tropes, and has one of the most bland and downright dumb main characters I've seen in a long time. This movie has the bones of a passable story, but unfortunately Anne Black and the movie's writers didn't use anything they had to make it interesting, which ultimately leaves this movie a slow, boring, and uninspired slog to get through. this is one of Aerostorm Entertainment's first films they produced, and I'm not sure why they didn't want to make a good first impression with a passable movie. If this film wasn't all that good, man, I can't wait to watch the sequel. Why yes, there is a sequel, and if you thought this movie was something, just you wait. I give Dawn of the Dragon Slayer a 3.5 out of 10.